Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. The members present are Daniel, Tom, Pam via phone, and Ashley. Those not present are Doyle. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Today's date is July 31st. The time is 6:02 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask that those present turn off cell phones or set them to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet up on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items, and for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will then be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone and please state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and a vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the board. The board shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the board. The board will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion typically will either grant or deny the requested application. Any board member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of deliberation of their respective agenda item. Any person desiring to appeal the board's decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the filing of this decision with the Planning and Zoning Office. Okay, do we have any public comment on matters not on our agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and go down to item 4 here. I guess I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the July 3rd, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting. Do I have a second? Okay, have a second by Ashley. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the July 3rd, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Pam, did we get a vote from you on the approval of the minutes from the July 3rd meeting?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me, Pam? Can you hear me, Pam? We've had a disconnection.
Connected. For a minute ago.
Yeah, it's not muted.
Okay. Pam, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
You can. Okay. We are asking for a vote on the approval of the minutes from the July 3rd, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting.
I approve.
Okay. We're good on that vote. Okay.
I wanted us to report. Was it 4-0?
It was. Okay. So that motion approve the minutes passes 4-0. Okay, I'm going to move down to item 5. The public hearing is now open. I'm going to ask Dan to read the staff report.
Okay. Jason Myhos of Kroll Incorporated, applicant, and Midwest Auto Properties LLC have filed a conditional use permit application to request the use of the property designated as parcel number 884701200009 as a portable concrete plant in support of the Highway 20 paving project under the designated Iowa DOT number as presented in the packet. The proposed location directly abuts Highway 20 and Charles Avenue. This proposal's been noticed in Sioux City Journal's legal section on July 18th, 2023. The neighbors within 500 feet were duly notified by a July 18th, 2023 letter about this evening's Board of Adjustment public hearing. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, organizations, have been requested to comment. The property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District and is located in the special flood hazard area portions. And any proposed structures, temporary or permanent, will be subject to floodplain development permits. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance, the proposal meets the appropriate criteria for approval of the conditional use request. It is the recommendation of staff to approve the proposal. It's important for the record that to note that the Woodbury County Zoning Commission voted unanimously 5-0 to rescind their recommended approval to the Board of Adjustment that the said property be used as a temporary concrete plant at their meeting last week on July 24th. And one thing that I do want to point out as far as the decision-making criteria and the zoning ordinance on page 22, it basically says when the Board of Adjustment renders a decision, they have up to within 35 days after the public hearing, if need be, the Board of Adjustment shall either approve with conditions or limitations, or deny the requested conditional use. The Board of Adjustment, depending on the decision-making, shall set forth their findings of addressing the points enumerated. So the 6 criteria and the other 2 considerations, again, are where the decisions are rooted in as far as the conditional use criteria. With that said, again, I'll reiterate, as the staff report, we did not get any written inquiries. I did have a phone inquiry where they just asked me general questions about the location of the property, which for the record led to a question about a well being located on the property. Then in conjunction of working with Siouxland District Health, they investigated and they found a well that was capped years ago, and they have it marked to stay away from the location as far as the concrete plant. But other than that, I have nothing further to add.
Great. Do you want to hear that would wish to speak on this? On the concrete plant? Okay.
Aiden Kim Neal, we live at 1774 162nd Street, Lawton, Iowa. Our property is directly adjacent to that. We 162nd Street meets at the corner. Our property line is diagonal to the concrete plant. Our family farm is in that area as well. And our concerns are that there are decent hours of operations of the concrete plant, dust and pollutant control, things of that nature, the amount of dust that this is going to create for our household area and our neighbors, how the traffic is going to be routed up and down that road, and how are they going to maintain that road differently with the amount of traffic that's going up and down it. It just the overall, we're not opposed to the plan. So please don't misunderstand that we're not opposed to it, but we just don't want something there that's going to be there for 2 or 3 years, which I understand as the project goes on, but we don't want it to be a lifetime establishment there. Also, like you said, we just don't want it to be something that intrudes upon. We moved to the country in that location because of just the beauty of the area and the amount of concrete trucks that we run up and down the road. But 162nd Street, Charles, and how they enter into traffic there does play a major part in how it affects our property. So those are our big concerns. And like I said, definitely not opposed to the plan, but just some rules and regulations, and some stipulations on how it's operations.
Now you're on the east side of Charles, right?
Yes, we're on the west side of Charles.
Oh, you're on the west side?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll be directly south of the plant?
Yes, we're directly south.
How far south are you?
Yeah, medium west, well, we're kind of kitty corner, so our house sits up on top of,
Oh, okay.
see.
Okay. Mhm. Was it the? Take your mouse to the left, but right there, is that your residence?
Yes, that's right there.
That's right,
Our
okay.
family farm is just directly below that. My dad wants to, but I believe he's the gentleman that called about the well questions. Those are concerns on, those have been addressed, so. Like I said, not opposed to the plan, and I know it's a great location. How do we limit it so it's not an eyesore, it's not a health hazard for us, it's not. I can only imagine our trucks are gonna run up and down 162nd Street to get to that location.
We've already seen an increase in traffic with just the construction project. So this is just, in our opinion, compound traffic.
Well, Charles Avenue, that's a gravel road, is that right?
Yes.
And what if it's 162nd? I'm not familiar, is that gravel as well? Okay.
The, dead end dirt road, and then 20 years ago, the county came in and opened it up so there was access to for a farmer. That was my understanding.
As far as your concerns about the hours of operation, I don't know how far we can limit that, I'll have to refer that to Dan in a second, but what are you looking for as far as hours of operation?
It's something reasonable. I think 6 o'clock in the morning is reasonable, and 10 o'clock at night. Right? Something that's, just normal business. Like I said, they're not trying to.
If I may,
Yeah.
last week, that was brought up at the zoning commission and the contractor, Jason Myhost, was on the phone and he basically said they didn't have much interest looking at the daylight hours, and we're moving into, into the fall when it gets darker at night, and they don't have a lot of interest in operating kind of late at night. So they sounded to the point where they would be real reasonable as far as the duration of the Highway 20 project, as well as day and night. The one thing to hopefully make clear is this conditional use permit opportunity is only allowed under a temporary basis. So it is automatically set up in the ordinance where it cannot become a permanent a plant where they have it in there. So the board could likely consider putting the time frame on, or kind of follow directly with the DOT time frame as well. But this is entirely a support function to the Highway 20 project. And once the Highway 20 is complete, they won't have any major interest on even being there. They'll want to pack up and leave, basically. So
I do.
Is understand that we want that project to be finished just as much as.
Sooner than later.
Yes.
I do believe, does it state somewhere, Dan, that it has to be returned to its previous state? And because they were concerned about the state of this land after the project is over. Is there wording in their permit that does say it does have to be returned to the previous state?
there's kind of two things that are kind of happening right now, where they got a grading permit, which they can through the state as well as the county to do some basically dirt work, elevation work. And with that said, that's a separate issue. But typically under a conditional use permit, the goal is to mitigate and reduce any kind of adverse effects, whatever they might be, to the property and to neighboring properties. So it's reasonable to have an expectation to return the property back to a respectable state.
Are they gonna, owners eventually gonna put a building down there?
Yeah, you might recall this property went through a rezone, I believe, last fall to flip it to the commercial district. And that area around the Highway 20 corridor has future planning in there as commercial. The property owner at one point wanted to flip the district for future commercial opportunity. And I believe that they were approached about using that as a support mechanism. It's an ideal location for them to, from that standpoint, to stage the concrete operation to direct the highway. So they were definitely looking for that as a place to be close enough to the highway where they're not, a mile or so away, where it has a larger impact on more neighborhoods and everything. And my understanding is they want to stage it there and get right up on the highway, basically through there. Kind of.
Is there intent to enter the highway from Charles Avenue?
My understanding is kind of based on what they presented, that's kind of the staging area. They've got the one driveway up on Charles to go from there. Then they've got, of course, the one on the south. It's a bit more closer to you. But that access point of Charles has been a convenient location for them around the corridor because it is access. So I believe, I can't speak for them, but that was one of their choice areas to do this.
So is it reasonable to expect that, so they're gonna enter in on Charles, leave on 162nd, enter back onto Charles, and then enter back onto the highway?
As far as their, the criteria that they presented here, I have to kind of go back, excuse me for a second, and look through.
According to this drawing, the concrete plant and loadout is on the north side, so I would assume that the access onto Charles would be them leading into. I don't know about coming in. It's
I want a lot of those trucks until they get farther east, probably just go up the south part of the highway or the loaded trucks, I would think would go up the south side and let flow,
Yeah.
Right.
To keep away from that cluster.
Yeah, south.
Yeah, because it converges right now, it's literally right on top of that entrance to Charles.
Yep.
Better get that map back up here.
Dan, for a question about like conditions that could be part of a suggested motion for approval. We can stipulate a timeframe consistent with Iowa DOT project for the Highway 20 reconstruction, and like we could also stipulate like conditions that the land return to the original state or the state.
Yeah, and the kind of the daylight, I think, has been
Yes.
used in the past with the borrow pit. It's kind of down there by.
I did notice that they, in the planning and zoning minutes, that they indicated that as well during,
So-
sun up to sundown.
so rather than a time frame, it's south to the sundown.
Yeah, sun up to sundown was kind of something that's been used in the past. I know that the Hornick Burn project borrow pit, they kind of took that route. As far as kind of a preferred route, the expectation would be to mitigate, any aspect on the neighborhood and everything of that nature. At times, depending on traffic and what's going on out there, hopefully they get into a kind of a coordinated routine that's very, you can kind of expect what a day is like in the realm of doing that. But it may be reasonable to say that the preferred route is directly going up Charles Avenue for sure, but being entirely restricted, at times it's probably likely you have a little bit of flexibility where maybe if a truck has to go that way because of the major type of traffic condition.
We're not trying to be unreasonable. We're just trying to we want reasonable expectations for them as well. And we want to be a good neighbor, just like we want them to be a good neighbor to all of us out there. So we're open to ideas and suggestions, but we just want to have those concepts out there brought up, and these are our concerns.
We agree, it's an ideal location to do this, but it's also our home.
So did, I didn't see anything in the planning and zoning minutes about like plans to repair the roads after the increased traffic or anything about like mitigation of like the dust or anything.
Yeah, it didn't get into that, so direct, but, it's definitely understandable and reasonable to make, references.
Especially with road repairs. I mean, those trucks tear those roads up.
As far as dust control you guys are concerned about, what do you believe would be the worst area of the dust? Are you concerned with the Charles Avenue or 162nd here? Or?
I guess what we would ask is that when we get to that point of them entering and leaving, that it's unreasonable for us to come up and hear this what we want. Because we don't know what's gonna happen. But what we're asking for is we come back to you and say, or come back to them, that there be some reasonable expectations from them to put dust control out, to just be good neighbors. That's, we're not trying to be unreasonable. We want this definitely to go through so it can finish. We just want some accommodations.
Can they come back and ask for those accommodations once, like, say we were to approve tonight?
As far as going through the approval, it would be important to
For us
ask
to
something
mention it.
what
Tonight.
condition.
Yeah.
The time frame on the project, with everything with this, is real tight as far as, moving to the next step with the DOT. And the DOT is kind of the key player as far as, getting to the grading phase, the concrete phase, getting everything kind of in order. So they're prepping to, you know, move into this phase pretty quick. And my understanding, again, not being able to speak for them, is they want to move into the phase so that they can complete the phase, so they can, of course, move on to the next project.
Do we want to be laying concrete sooner than later?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's just reasonable expectations from you guys, and whatever you come up with, the dust control, or just, we don't have any expectations that, we just.
Jason did mention on his phone call that they were gonna do dust mitigation by putting down water. And so they do have a plan for that, so.
Water's gonna dry quickly.
Yeah.
I've seen them doing that on the tore-up lanes of Highway 20. I don't know if he would be referring to that. I've seen him doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd be referring to that specifically or actually doing that on the haul route as well.
If I may, it may be reasonable for the board to, you know, consider the sunset in terms of the day, just reiterating that it will be important to mitigate dust in there. It sounds like, as Don had mentioned, that they did make that reference. So it's in their interest to, you know, do that as well. So that can definitely be part of a resolution that is put into place. It's
You get a
totally.
lot of truck traffic on Charles anyhow, don't you? We're going to Peterson.
Did I miss the Peterbilt hats on the way?
I did too. No worries.
Thank you guys for your consideration and the time that you guys put in. You're giving up your time for this. We do appreciate it. Just beginning to be heard. Helps a lot, so. Everything else.
So like I said, any considerations that could be made in order for it to still be whole
Mhm.
and not have to bring up the dust line and wash away the roads.
Did Mark say anything on keeping?
As far as Mark's comments, they were the ones that were entered into the record, so I have to refer back to that.
Which I read that. He just sounded like he was okay with it happening.
Yeah.
So that may be something we refer to in our side of things.
And my understanding is they've done some of that with this grading work now, with water being brought up on there.
You guys have any further questions for them?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else that would wish to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Okay, we have a motion by Ashley, a second by Tom to close the public hearing.
And get ready.
Are you still with us, Pam?
I am.
Okay, we have a motion by Ashley and a second by Tom to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes 4-0. Okay. I guess we're here to entertain amendments to the motion potentially. One thought I had was that we could add something in there that says that, you know, reasonable dust control should be used on haul routes along with reasonable maintenance to that effect.
And something like ongoing maintenance or, because like.
Yeah,
I think we'd want it to
maybe
be,
during the duration of the project.
yeah, so road maintenance.
Reasonable dust control and maintenance on haul routes during the duration of the project.
Mhm.
Hours of operation should be from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
And then what about traffic routing to avoid hardships? That's something we need to address.
I would probably say, instead of getting into the specifics of the route, say much emphasis shall be placed on using Charles Avenue.
Okay.
To access the 20, because there might be a time when you run a truck that way, basically. So
Okay.
So should we even, I mean,
Are these just gonna be little conditions we're gonna put in?
it'll be one of the, probably the whereases that is proved based on these
Sure.
conditions, and then it would, each one would reference, the dust control, the haul or sun up to sundown.
Okay.
maintenance. Because I do appreciate that, like it's being a person who lives on a gravel road that's heavily trafficked. I mean, we also contribute to it, you know, but
We
So-
should also say that much emphasis should be placed on using the entrance on Charles Avenue. How do we want to word
so the
that?
entrance is the loadout area? Is that kind of like what they're,
Those are the 2 points of access, basically.
oh, I guess I didn't see that.
So
Okay.
they need a driveway here, they need a driveway here. County engineer always approves with the driveways.
Right,
So, basically, we did ask for them to label each one support trailer, so I imagine much of the emphasis will be, they want to get to the location as quick as possible too.
Right.
So
so they'll drive in from 160th, come out on Charles.
that would be my understanding of what was presented.
Which, I mean, if they're living kitty corner down in that area, I mean, there shouldn't be a huge, words are hard. A lot of traffic coming in or dust and all of that.
I think that it kind of mitigates it if you really do target the dust control,
Yeah.
that area, and, if you leave it flexible on the route. Without them kind of, you know, getting into the routes as much on zoning commission as well as here, I think that you want to be a bit flexible as far as that possible.
Okay.
So conditions such as the dust control, the road maintenance, hours of operation are main things, I think.
Those things would mitigate.
I think help with the neighbors too. So I mean, I would make a motion to approve that the property located on parcel number 884701200009 can be used as a temporary concrete plant in support of Iowa DOT project NHSX-020-1 parentheses 179 parentheses hyphen 83H 97 with conditions that reasonable accommodations are made for dust control. Reasonable accommodations are made for road maintenance on haul routes for the duration of the project. And that hours of operation are from sunup to sundown. Don't ask me to repeat that.
And then how about, do we want to put in there steps should be taken to return the property to an acceptable state? Is that fair?
Yes, yes, I
Fair
agree with that,
amendment?
because we did, yeah. And then steps taken to return the property to the original state or the state approved by the owner.
The work that's been done there down, that grading, is that done by the owners of the property?
Yes,
They already had it.
that was part of their plan. to get a grading permit to adjust the elevations. There's floodplain there, so they're trying to mitigate the floodplain to elevate it. As far as working toward a floodplain development permit to be above the BFE under future development. It's this opportunity kind of fell in their, they were basically approached for this opportunity to use it for the Highway 20 project. So any other plans kind of got delayed as far as kind of turning it over to Kroll to stage the project at the time. So you basically have two things going on here. They're trying to prep it for their future as far as grading it, but yet they want to put this plant here so to support the project. Then the plant goes away, then they'll be back to working probably with the county as far as permitting.
Next steps. Well, we have a motion by Ashley. Do I need to repeat what we've got?
Technically, it's in our bylaws too.
Okay, if somebody has some legible notes I could read on that, or
Whereas this will be approved with the following conditions, reasonable efforts for dust control will be mitigated, to reasonable maintenance during all hours of the haul route. And also entering on 160th and exiting from Charles Avenue. Hours of operation, sun up to sundown. And then the last is return property to the original state.
I don't think I said anything about the entrance and the exit, just in case, like, if that were to change or anything, strike that.
Would it end up being 4?
Yes.
Correct.
1, 2,
That's what it.
3, 4. Yeah, with the return it to the original state.
okay, so that,
Second or motion.
so we have that motion by Ashley. We have a second, and we have a second by Tom for that motion. I guess we are ready to go. It's okay with you, Dan? Okay, all those in favor of the suggested motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes 4-0. Okay, I'm going to move down to the next public hearing. And I'm going to go, let's see, this is the, yes, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on the next item of business, and I'm going to ask Dan to read that into the staff report.
Okay, William Kyle Walker, owner, who's here this evening, have filed a conditional use permit application for the installation and use of a wind turbine. Said turbine, along with its support tower, was previously installed on this property, and the owner has retroactively filed this permit request as required under section 3.034 of the zoning ordinance. The property abuts Highway 141 and Fayette Avenue. This proposal has been properly noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section on July 18, 2023. The neighbors within 500 feet were duly notified via a July 14, 2023 letter about tonight's meeting, public hearing before the Board of Adjustment. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been requested to comment. The property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District and is located in the special flood hazard area. The portion where the house is located was removed from the floodplain via letter of map revision based on fill previously. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance, the proposal can meet the criteria for approval of the conditional use request based on conditions. At the meeting on July 24, 2023, the Woodbury County Zoning Commission unanimously approved 5-0 the motion to recommend approval of this conditional use permit request to the Board of Adjustment with the following conditions. The turbine tower placement shall meet or exceed the 10-foot accessory structure setback requirements from the west property line as enumerated in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance. The turbine tower installation shall comply with floodplain management regulations of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance. And as I had referenced before, again, the decision making as far as the application. Again, the ordinance states within 35 days after the public hearing, the Board of Adjustment shall approve with conditions or limitations, or deny the requested conditional use application. The Board of Adjustment shall set forth their findings of fact by addressing the points enumerated in the subsection 2.029. And that basically is our standard 6 criteria. Other considerations to see that the application can comport with those respective items. As you all have before you in the packet, Mid-American kind of put a statement out there kind of with the relationship, which is of course separate from the conditional use information. But other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay, is there anyone present here that would like to speak on this? Okay,
You want to come up to the mic, please?
I guess for the record, if you don't mind stating your name and address again. Yes, yeah, name and address. All right. I guess, Mr. Walker, in reviewing this information beforehand of the meeting here, I noticed communication from Mid-American, and they were referring to a farm exemption or ag exemption, and they vehemently disagreed with that. And then I see here in part of your applicant response, you put this wind generator up for generation for home, farm, and business. I guess what is your farm business? Do you have a farm business?
We got separate farms there in Nebraska. We have a pond in our yard, we raise fish, and we have small orchard. We schedule that farm taxes. I tried going that route to mitigate all of this retroactively. I hired a tower company to install it, they never pulled the permit, and then here I am. So
What is the criteria, Dan, for ag exemption? Does
The criteria is that the land and the use of the property have to be primarily adapted for the use of agricultural purposes. So the use of the farm you have to basically glean income as a farm using the structures, using the land that generates farm income.
Does it have to have a Schedule F?
Yeah, typically Schedule F would be an indicator.
I don't think the ag exemption just stipulates primarily row crops. So you mentioned raising fish. You expand upon that, like,
we have a catfish pond in our backyard. We dug a hole in our yard, so there'd always be water set back there. Actually filled in, it actually helped the neighbor to the west, his field would always splits around, the water actually doesn't sit out in his field, and it actually goes to the hole, and it's supposed to, and he actually dug a trench between the north property line of my property and the south edge of his field. He trenched a ditch in, so now the water goes up the ditch to the county ditch.
I guess the reason for my question is more about like the claiming the raising catfish as part of a ag business. I guess I don't understand that. And so that's what I was hoping you could expand on. I mean, you sell them to businesses?
We sell.
Like where? I guess I'm curious.
Flash freeze them and sell them to whoever wants them. It's a small thing, you know, probably making $4,000 a year.
Just private sales.
Right. It's like selling chickens.
As far as I see, we use state and federal tax credits, I believe, on this, or grants. Were those grants, were they given under the pretense of the agriculture exemption, or is that just, were you able to receive those grants under just your private business use?
You have to be a farmer's Schedule F, or you have to run a small business on your property that we can qualify for a 40% grant. So whatever the cost of the tower was, to give you 40%. And then the federal government gives you a 50% tax credit on your taxes. So essentially, the federal government is giving you 90% of the cost.
So that was granted to you under the pretense of your roofing business that operates on your property, is that right?
And it's kind of,
Okay.
How far is that tower from the property line right now?
on the highway or?
No, from the property line to the tower,
Which property line, I guess?
west
The
property
west
line.
property line, I believe it's whatever's on that.
Because that's kind of the element of the concern for me is just how close it appears to be to your property line.
There's a fence there, you know, there's pins out there, there's fence is set back 10 foot from the pins. And then the tower's actually set probably 10 or 12 feet from the tower, so technically we're at like 23 to 25 feet west property,
And how tall is that?
100 foot.
So now you said the fence was set back from the pins. So, you're saying, so the fence,
Pins like
yep. So your fence is east of those pins or west of them?
the each doesn't.
Okay,
It's inset like it's supposed to be.
okay,
And the tower, it only tilts, it's a tilting tower and it tilts to the south, which is towards the highway. So it tilts onto my property. Doesn't. Items that go down 40 feet in the road.
do we have any comment or anything from the adjoining or adjacent landowners? Usually we'll get some comments submitted from adjacent landowners on
They weren't here at the last meeting. It's
We didn't get any written documentation.
no communication. Okay. The only thing that would concern me about that is, the abutting property owners, maybe being not able to place any structures or, vehicles or anything in that area if a tower were to fail, and go over the property line. I didn't know if there should be something written, and a written agreement from those adjacent property owners.
Or
They were here last week and they didn't say anything. I talked to them and what's up? They gotta do it.
can we have a stipulation that says that he's responsible in case this wind turbine were to fail and fall on the property of his neighbors?
Yes, so anything like that becomes a civil issue directly between the neighbors together. As far as the ordinance having the 10-foot setback and that 10-foot setback applying, it kind of was reflected in the packet. Person could have a tall structure that, would fall towards that way, and usually it ends up being the relationship, but it probably wouldn't hurt to, highlight or point that out.
Whereas.
It's an open standard.
As it being a civil issue directly between them.
Would it be,
Just like a tree falling.
Yeah, it would be similar to that.
so that would be a potential whereas we could put in, or do we want to add a whereas? We should require the adjacent property owner to submit a written okay on this, or?
I think that part would be, would be a bit more difficult as the structure has been built, but it would probably be more about highlighting the liability or the situation that if something were to fall, it's a matter that's strictly between the two parties.
Okay.
So it seems that this has been built in a floodplain. Okay, and the electronics for this turbine are at ground level. Where are they?
So, and all that stuff's in Mr. Priestley's packet.
But can you just tell it like where they are? Yeah, like approximately.
The wires go up the towers, they go down the tower and go down through a conduit, go to the building.
So I noticed that in the information from Mid-America that it says the electrical inspector is not satisfied. What are plans to remedy that?
Basically what happened is, I'm a journeyman electrician by trade. Technically, as a homeowner, you can pull your own electrical permit, but they're classifying the structure as a commercial structure, so I had to hire electrician to pull permit to satisfy the electrical inspectors. Whatever it was. And there was 2 items that needed to be corrected before the electrical inspector would pass the inspection. Those have been remedied. And I think, as far as I'm aware of, he's coming back on Friday to do the inspection.
So that can be another whereas, like, with the condition that this all passes the electric. Yeah, thank you.
Mid-American, that all issues have been resolved.
Yes.
And if I may say for the record, he's filed the floodplain development permit and everything, so he's working with staff as far as, addressing the elevation requirements. It's just that we're looking at a tower turbine in the floodplain, so it's imperative to mention it and discuss it as far as the conditional use permit. So anything that you would probably condition would basically be a condition to direct that the floodplain requirements are complied with. And that typically means that any electrical assets, anything of value, typically the electrical assets have to be elevated 1 foot above the base flood elevation. And so the base, obviously the tower sits on the elevation. So you realize where the natural ground is and what the BFE is. So at the flood level, whatever discrepancy that is from the base flood elevation, that those assets have to be above the BFE regardless of where the natural ground is. So you would have to basically prove that it's been elevated to that.
And they have been approved. I believe you have that information, Dan.
I have the data that you gave me as far as
Really, the only electrical equipment that would be on the tower is at least 6 foot off the base flood. The actual engine that the tower sits on, that is, I believe, at least 1.5 foot, 2 feet out of off the pipe. So the actual structure itself is 1.5 to 2 feet out of the flood.
So language around direct that the floodplain requirements are met would satisfy and make sure that everybody's covered.
It would be just simply to require that the floodplain requirements be met. And just for the record, we've requested an updated BFE to the flood studies have definitely changed, as you know, with the new maps coming out and everything. And Jason Kahn, our resource down at the DNR, definitely encourages us to use the latest BFEs. There's an age BFE out there. Typically, those might change, they might not change, but it's imperative to look at the most existing data. So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as the floodplain regulations. The floodplain development permits are a separate permitting entity that is typically from staff, unless there's a variance involved. So as far as working with staff, of course, Mr. Walker has applied and he's been working with staff on that. So that's something we can administratively look at as well.
One other thing that just, it crosses my mind here is since this structure was built before receiving a conditional permit approval, the site plan wasn't submitted to our county zoning commission. I think it would be reasonable to maybe require that the property owner maybe hire a surveyor to determine the tower meets the 10-foot setback, from the actual property line. Because I know you're saying the pins are there, but
It's already been done.
I don't have an actual survey that shows pins and locations. So it would need that.
And that will go through, like, who would he need to contact?
Well,
there just have to be a certified document of a.
Well, and the Board of Adjustments in the past, at least before my time, put conditions on where somebody could request a professional service to highlight an issue that may not have been answered. So as far as requiring a survey, it would be something certified that basically says, here's the property line, here's where the respective structures are, and be signed and stamped by an Iowa licensed surveyor.
So there would be no discrepancies there once that was done.
If that came back, then that would empower the granting of a building permit. So if you were to add something there, then that would be part of being able to approve the building permit per se.
Sure. Okay. So things are currently being remedied with Mid-American.
Small the state electrical inspector. Once he passes the inspection, if everything comes off of the witness test, and make sure that there's the proper voltages where they need to be. Once that's done, we wait 15 days, they come stick a meter on. That meter, they call it, it spins the meter backwards, the tower's running. Once that's done, turn it on. So that's where we're at with that whole process, and
So they will,
like I said, this could have been all, I wouldn't be saying here if the tower company just would have done their due diligence. They wanted the county's website, all that whole building tower, or did a conditional use permit. They didn't go back and read whatever, 37 pages back on the website or whatever. They're a non-town contractor. So here I am doing all the work that they should have done before the work even started.
Do we want to say anything about, a last kind of whereas, it's like adherence to state, local, state, federal laws or anything around wind turbines, or do we need any of that language in here?
That's entirely up to the board. I understand you've done that in the past.
Yeah, that's what
that's kind of our disclaimer that we add.
Yeah. I think that.
Okay.
I don't know, laws is.
It's a disclaimer, I guess, that assumes that takes the liability off of us as a county board, doesn't it? That everything applies to state, any state and federal laws that might apply to this condition.
Well, typically, every level of government has their own respective sphere of permitting. Whether you're digging in the dirt, you have to deal with DNR, or whether you're in the air, you have to deal with FAA, or you have to deal with all these different matters. And so the county sphere is typically the setbacks, the location of structures, and the use of property based upon the ordinance. Hence, a conditional use permit is basically locating something and using something. The building permit is part of that, but that's pretty much the own sphere of the county. So the county may allow something that's more restricted at different levels of government. So it actually most of the time falls on the property owner to ensure that they can meet all the different spheres. So you might meet something just fine in the county, but realize there's another level of government where things are a bit more restricted.
Okay.
Pam, I guess I don't want to leave you out. Did you have any other questions?
No, it sounds, everything sounds good to me, so.
Great. We'll work on some suggested amendments then.
Yeah, other discussion.
No, I guess, do you guys have any further questions for Mr. Walker? Okay, I don't believe I do at this time.
And I do. So last week's meeting, what was the people that were on that board? Are they on the same board as you guys, or are you guys separate?
That would have been the zoning commission. So yeah, we are separate boards. Yep, zoning, yes. Dan, I guess I'll refer to you.
Yeah, well, they're a recommendation body that both boards have to look through it and have both meetings. So they go through similar processes where they review an application and they send over a recommendation, but this board ultimately decides.
Yes, it was voted unanimously 5-0 that they approved it.
Did they approve it to send it to us then for final review?
They, as the packet said, they approved the recommendation.
Against the recommendation.
Do we
You vote against the recommendation, and they voted unanimously 5-0.
I,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
I was just asking for my.
Yep, yeah, we can. Yep. We can if that's what the pleasure of the board is.
And what the regs direct us to. I mean,
Yep.
like, we have to back up everything that we're deciding, so.
There was just a lot more questions tonight than there was.
Well, just doing our due diligence,
Right.
making
I
sure.
understand, I understand.
Anything else for us?
Okay. I guess, seeing that then, Pam does not have any further questions. I would make a motion to close the public hearing on this.
It's not gonna,
Share responsibilities.
So I make a motion to close the public hearing, second, by Tom. All those in favor of, closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye.
I,
Okay, that passed 4-0. So from jotting down some of the notes we've talked about here, I believe we have a potential suggested motion to approve this conditional use permit with the following conditions. And you guys can edit me on this, but it sounds like approval from Mid-American and the final inspection process is completed. The way he said it's going to be, we want that.
I would probably point out, as with the staff recommendation, that is kind of a separate, that's his relationship with Mid-American.
Okay,
So
so
that's
that's
outside of the scope of,
what we have, what we need to worry about then. Okay, as far as that, then,
So if we
okay.
said something like, for the purposes of the electrical inspection, just like, because I think the piece of that's tied to the floodplain, right? So like direct that the floodplain requirements are all completely met.
So the turbine tower installation placement shall comply with the floodplain management regulations of Woodbury County zoning ordinance, section 5.03. That the electrical components must be 1 foot above base flood elevation.
and when you mention like the part about other levels of government or other, that would kind of catch things such as.
Yep. That's kind of why I was wanting to cover our butts. So then adhere to local, state and federal laws. Applicable, all applicable, yeah.
Okay,
And then the other thing I want to make sure we add is that a professional Iowa licensed surveyor to ensure the 10-foot setback.
okay. Let's see here, I had a note on that. So if we could, suggested, amendment, I guess, or stipulation would be that, we require the property owner to hire a land surveyor, professional land surveyor, to determine that the tower meets the 10-foot side yard setback.
And you'll ultimately, it has to meet the setbacks. So you probably want to address that.
So like if it doesn't, is that what you're saying? Like if it doesn't meet the
Well,
10-foot
you're,
setback?
we were told it does as far as the site plan and everything. So you're saying have a survey.
It's already been surveyed once. So, and it meets all the requirements for the flood.
Has that survey been filed with the?
Yes.
I don't have a
So
survey.
it's from Craig Beagle with BNK, he has, and I'm pretty sure I emailed everything to Pam. So,
You had given me the one that kind of shows where you put the dots there as far as the floodplain, but I don't have a direct measurement as far as the property line to the
I can
structure.
get
You can
that.
get
Okay.
Yep.
So then just landowner will provide,
So that would need to be filed as probably likely part of the building permit.
so if not already, we'll just put landowner will file professional Iowa licensed surveyor to ensure the 10-foot setback.
It would probably need to be an official stamp survey.
So we're looking, the other thing we had talked about is about the liability between the two parties. So just kind of highlighting that the liability is between them and not anything that we would be responsible for in the event that the turbine failed and like fell on the property of someone else. Or do we need to worry about that?
Something maybe that highlights the civil matter between you two.
Only thing it's gonna bring is my fence.
So we could say that any failure of this structure, will result in a civil matter between
The
two
two
involved, two parties involved.
I think that hits. And then again, just making sure we adhere to local, state and federal. with the loss.
Do you have that the turbine tower installation placement shall meet or exceed the 10-foot accessory setback requirements from the west property line as enumerated in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance section 3.04? Okay, you have that
That's,
We have
that
to
that would be written. You'll need,
in the final
Read
motion.
it in.
you'll need to
Yep.
read in a motion like as the previous one. That's the place.
Okay. Yeah, I hope you were taking some pretty good notes.
I think, I mean, we'll read in the first two bullet points. We'll add in the survey. Gosh, I have a tickle in my throat. Add in the surveyor and have that submitted to Dan, stamped, whatever, and then adhere all, then kind of the cover, adhere to local, state, federal laws applicable.
How will the surveyor approach that as far as, will he actually, or they actually state in their deal that in their statement that it's, so many feet from the,
They would
from
need
the
to,
pin?
they would need to basically do a graphic that shows the property line.
tower versus,
There, and submit it, what that distance is, and it would need to be.
usually they just go by.
Go ahead and give this a go. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit request with the following conditions. The property owner shall ensure that the turbine tower installation / placement shall meet or exceed the 10-foot accessory setback requirements from the west property line as enumerated in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, section 3.04. The turbine tower installation / placement shall comply with the floodplain management regulations of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, section 5.03. That the property owners will obtain and submit a professional Iowa licensed survey to ensure the 10-foot setback with stamped surveyor. I don't know, Dan, we're gonna have to play with the words there. Okay, yep, and submitted to staff.
Property line.
Well, it would, this new one would have to show where the new structure is on the property, you know.
Since it's already there, I guess. Yep. Okay.
And then the fourth condition is just indicating that it would be a civil matter in the event that there was a failure of the wind turbine, and that matter would be strictly between the two parties.
Primary property owner and the adjacent property.
Make it better language.
Okay.
That is good, yep. And then lastly, adherence to all state, local, state, and federal applicable laws and regulations. Yep, that was my second bullet point. I just read the recommendation and then added the other three-ish bullet points.
Was there gonna be something in there about state, electrical inspection or something like that?
That was covered under the applicable laws.
And I think also in the floodplain management regs.
Okay,
That is my suggested motion.
Okay. We have record of that, so we're good to go ahead and vote on this then? Or do we need to, we get, to read it back in? Okay. And somebody, Dan, can you read?
I have to do it, don't I? Okay, so help me fill in the gaps because I don't have this word for word. I make a motion to approve this conditional use permit request with the following conditions. The property owner shall ensure that the turbine tower installation / placement shall meet or exceed the 10-foot accessory setback requirements from the west property line as enumerated in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, section 3.04. Second, the turbine tower installation / placement shall comply with the floodplain management regulations of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, section 5.03. Property owner will obtain and submit to staff a professionally Iowa licensed survey to ensure the 10-foot setback. This is to be a stamped survey. Okay. Fourth, just to note that if there's any failure of the turbine, that it would be a civil matter between the property owner and the adjacent property.
Primary landowner and an adjacent landowner.
Lastly, adhere to local, state, and federal applicable laws and regulations.
That match.
Appears to be 5.
Okay. So we have a motion by Ashley to approve this conditional use permit with our following suggested amendments. We have a second. Okay, we have a second by Tom. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving this conditional use permit, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion for the conditional use permit passes 4-0.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move down to the next item, which would be consideration to adopt the amendment to rules of procedure for the meeting, day, time, and location of the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Dan, do I refer to you on that point?
Yeah, I can kind of discuss it. This is an action item. I know that the last 2 meetings of the Board of Adjustment, I brought this to you as an information item. It was kind of based on where we had received word about some concerns about overtime being Sheriff's Department and everything. With the supervisors our supervisor directed me to kind of bring it to your attention. And I know that the last couple of times that we had met, there were some concerns on how it might impact some of the members on being able to get here. And ultimately, the idea that was floated was 5 o'clock or earlier. And I can't speak for all that you all said the last the couple months, but I brought it forward to hopefully get the Board of Adjustment on record, regardless of what your position is. And again, in your packet on page 77, it says either consider moving the date, time, and location by amending the rules of procedure, possibly the meeting time to 5 o'clock p.m. It appeared, again, and you can correct me too, but as I have it written in the packet, as a result, there appeared to be a consensus for leaving things the way they are. And so I gave you a couple possible motions to consider, whether you do a motion or a second to leave the schedule as is with no recommended changes, or whether you go in there and decide to amend the rules of procedure to pull it back at 5 o'clock p.m. So page 77 kind of gave those 2 items, but I would have to turn it back over to the chair and see how you all would feel about at least taking one of the 2 actions as far as this type of change. Of course, one of the members is not here tonight as well, so that's always something to cut into consideration.
Spot.
Did he give any indication as to how he would vote in this matter? I mean, not that we can count it in the vote. But
As far as the last couple months, I can only go by kind of what he had referenced in the meetings. So,
and he was in favor of keeping it at the 6 hour.
I really couldn't speak to that as much as I kind of felt that we got a sense that the board was more about keeping it.
That was what I had thought as well.
Yeah. Obviously, me too. Like, I am unable to make a 5 o'clock meeting anywhere, any day of the week. And so this is my best option on the first Monday, generally, of the month at 6 p.m.
I think for public, it's 6 o'clock's better myself, you know, for the public.
Get people here to
Get people here and
Pam, do you have a comment on this as well?
Well, as I said, I have another meeting at 7 in Mobile on the first Monday of every month. So, I would be in favor of moving it to another night or another time or whatever. But, I really, it really doesn't matter to me because I've been making this work. I get late to my meeting usually, but, it's been working, so I don't have a problem with leaving it as is.
Okay. Since this is a action item, do we want
Make a motion.
to make a motion even though a member is not present?
Fully the board's prerogative, how they want to choose to handle it.
Otherwise, we'd have to
We
come back,
have a-
say we take action on it tonight.
What about you? What do you think, Tom? Should we take action tonight on this? Okay. Pam, are you okay with us making a decision on this tonight?
Yes,
Okay. I guess, do we have a suggested motion then on this?
I'll make a motion that we leave as is at 6 o'clock
Okay.
on Monday.
We have a motion by Tom for the Board of Adjustment to leave the schedule as is with no recommended changes to the rules of procedure. Would that be fair to say?
Right.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Ashley. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
I
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes 4-0. Moving on down the list to item 6, do we have any public comment on matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will move down to item 7 to board member comment or inquiry. Does anyone have anything for the good of the board?
Fair.
Okay, moving down to item 8, is there a staff update?
Just one major thing. The Board of Supervisors tomorrow night will have their first public hearing on looking at solar criteria of maybe putting a conditional use opportunity in the category for the agricultural preservation zoning district. The other part of that proposal is to allow a residential based, if somebody wants to put a panel on their roof or out on their property, it would be an accessory structure. So it's kind of a twofold proposal that we want to be very clear, hopefully that the public understands that they're quite different in some respects, as one's residential and the other is more so the utility scale, where if somebody were to apply for an application and it goes on the commission, come to the Board of Adjustment, look at that, at least from that proposal. As far as the Board of Supervisors, anytime something gets kicked into the public hearing realm for the Board of Supervisors, they have a lot of authority and prerogative as it comes to looking at each proposal and either adopting part of it or not adopting part of it or all of it. So there's lots of different ways to look at the respective proposals. So it's basically in their hands as far as engaging the public hearing process, understanding it.
So will that be a set of 3 public hearings on the solar panels?
So it'd be the next 3 Tuesdays. So that would be all at 4:45. So it'd be, I think, the 1st, 8th, and 15th. That's definitely something to, if you run across the public, let them know, I guess, as far as there's a proposal out there.
Well, if there's nothing else, I guess I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Is there a second? Motion by Ashley, second by Tom to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I
Opposed? Okay, adjourned.
Thanks, Pam, for joining.
sure. I'm sorry I can't be there